being used. And I bring that up because, you know what, being in college, man, this is the time where you start seriously pursuing your gifts in the local church. And you start acting as a part of the body. Otherwise, you become dead weight. Otherwise, you grow up and you become like those people that I call, they're like the appendix of the church. You know, the appendix, they don't really do anything. But they can blow up and kill the whole body, you know. And there's people like that in the church. They just sit around. They criticize everything. They start, fights and this and that, rather than using their God-given gift to serve in the body. And this is huge. He tells Jeremiah, look, I formed you for this. I made you for this. Before you were even born, I appointed you as a prophet to the nations. Do you look at your life that way? Do you think to yourself, God, you made me. There was a purpose. You thought ahead of time how you were going to craft me. And there's some work here on this earth that I can do that no one else can do. Because otherwise we just start comparing and arguing. It just gets worthless. You ever look in the mirror and just think, I'm weird? No, seriously, do you ever sometimes just think about yourself and you go, how come no one thinks like I do? Or you ever look and just go, man, why is my life the way it is? It seems like I think differently from everyone else. I act differently. And you just sometimes feel weird. You know what's weird? This is weird. Do you guys know what this is? Oh, you do? How many don't know what this is? Good. Okay. This is really cool. This is actually a kitchen appliance. And what it is you stick an apple in it. You throw all these gadgets around, and then you spin it. This is so cool. And when you spin it, what happens on the other end is it peels, cores, slices apples. So you have apple rings on the other side. Isn't that cool? Oh, that's cool. Okay. It's the idea of, sometimes we look at ourselves and we go, man, I don't know of anything else like this. Just look at yourself and you go, gosh, I don't look like anyone else. I don't act like anyone else. And I guess it was for me just finally getting to that point where I could finally say, God, that's a good thing. I'm glad I'm like no one else. Because sometimes, I'll sit and I'll look at my own life and I'll almost get discouraged. Like, God, you know what? I'm never going to be, a brainiac like a John MacArthur. Or I may never have the faith of a Chuck Smith or, just that practical application like a Chuck Swindoll. And I'll start comparing myself to all these guys out there and like, I'm never going to be like him. I'm never going to be like this guy. And to finally just go, you know what? But they're never going to be like me. They can't do this stuff. Okay, whatever it is, it's like, God, there's something unique about me. And you formed me, you fashioned me, you made me for a huge purpose on this earth. Do you really believe that there's a plan for you here? Like there's something for you to do? Or is your life just all about, well, I'm going to go to college and then, I think after that I'll get a job and then I'll get married and then, I'll have some kids. And then they're going to grow up and get married, and then I'm going to die. And seriously, there are people that think that. It's like, wow, that's your whole life goal. That's all I'm put on the earth to do. Man, or do you think, no, there's a purpose for me. More than just taking up space, I'm here to do something that God crafted me, and He has these works that He prepared beforehand that I should walk in them. Honestly, right now, do you believe that God just kind of threw you together with no purpose? Or do you believe that maybe some of those things that happened in your life were for a reason? Maybe the way you think and your personality and everything else and your giftedness is for a reason. And you're like no one else on this earth. It's a pretty amazing way to wake up in the morning. And think about yourself and go, God, I'm here for a purpose. I'm here for a reason. Like Jeremiah. He was appointed as a prophet to the nations. But right after God says that to Jeremiah, the very next verse, you would think, if God spoke to you and said, listen, this is what you're going to do. You're going to go to this city, and I created you for this. Before you were even born, I already knew this was what you were going to do. I knew you before I put you together, and I made you for this reason. You would think Jeremiah would sit there and go, whoa, that's intense. I'm going to go do it. But the first words out of Jeremiah's mouth is verse 6. He says, "Ah, sovereign Lord," I said, "I do not know how to speak. I am only a child." So God says, Jeremiah, I made you for this. The whole reason you're on this earth, I created you for this. And Jeremiah goes, I can't do that. I'm just a kid. I don't know how to speak. And I guess that happens to us a lot of times, where it's like we can get in that point where we go, okay, God, I know I was made for this. I'm going to do this. There's a purpose for me. But then we get insecure and we start going, well, but who am I? What am I going to accomplish? So God says to Jeremiah, the Lord said to me, "Do not say, I am only a child. You must go to everyone I send you to and say whatever I command you. Do not be afraid of them, for I am with you and will rescue you, declares the Lord." Then the Lord reached out his hand and touched my mouth and said to me, "Now I have put my words in your mouth. See, today I appoint you over nations and kingdoms to uproot and tear down, to destroy, to overthrow, to build and to plant." See, Jeremiah starts getting insecure, like, well, who am I? How am I going to do it? And God says, no, you don't understand. I'm going to be with you. I'm putting my words in your mouth. I'm giving you authority. So go out and do what you were called to do, what you were made to do. See, Jeremiah had all this fear in him, all this insecurity that I'm guessing a lot of us do. And you know what? I don't know. Maybe this passage is like a godsend for me, because I don't know if I shared here before, but when I was born, my mother died giving birth to me. And so I think about this verse and I think, God, you had my mom die delivering me. You had a reason. Like, when you said you formed me in my mother's womb, so you knew that my mother would die right after that. And so this woman gave her life to put me on this earth, and now I've got this purpose that I go out and do. It's a pretty incredible thought. But even in the midst of all that, we can still get insecure and go, yeah, but look at this problem, and look at how I screwed up in the past, and look at when I tried this, I failed here, here, and here. And God says, but I'm standing with you. See, this is still intimidating for me. I mean, I've been speaking for years. I speak probably 300-400 times a year. And I still get scared. Walking up on a stage, talking to people I don't know. Just going, God, I don't know what to say. I mean, I was sitting there, as we were doing the prayer meeting earlier this morning, and they're saying, gosh, we're so glad you're here. And I'm like, why? I mean, I just sit there before God. I go, God, man, these people are thinking I'm going to come and give this great message. What am I going to do? What am I going to say? And just reminding myself of what I was going to speak on. And no, God, God's right here speaking to me. It's impossible for me to impact anyone in this room. There are those of you that come in here and you don't want to be in chapel. It's a pain for you to come every time you come. Now, how in the world am I supposed to impact you and tell you, no, God has a purpose for your life? I can't. That's the answer. I can't do anything. But like God told Jeremiah, you just go out there and you say it, and I am with you, and I will give you the authority. Somehow my words will stick to you because of God. Do you have that confidence that God stands with you to enable you to do whatever He's called you to? I'm just going to jump to the end. It's funny, in verse 17, the same chapter, when God's about to send Jeremiah out, He says to him this. He says, get yourself ready, stand up and say to them whatever I command you. Do not be terrified by them, or I will terrify you before them. Hear what God says to Jeremiah? He says, you're going to go into this city and no one's going to listen to you. In fact, he says later on in that verse, he says that you're going to stand against the whole land, against the kings of Judah, its officials, its priests, and the people of the land. They'll fight against you, but will not overcome you, for I am with you and will rescue you, declares the Lord. He says, look, you're going to go into the city. Let's say God calls you. Let's say you're walking back to class or whatever, and God pulls you aside and says, listen, you know what you're going to do? You're going to go into Santa Barbara for the rest of your life. And you're going to go and you're going to preach to these people. But here, like he tells Jeremiah, he goes, the king's going to be against you. So the president's going to hate you. Okay, the president's going to hate you. The mayors can't stand you. All the police, they're going to be out for you. And he says, and the people. And the pastors. No one's going to listen to you. He tells Jeremiah, for 30 years you're going to have the kings, you're going to have all the officials, you're going to have all the other priests, and all the people against you. Think about that. What would that feel like if you knew that was your calling by God? You need to go out there to Santa Barbara for the rest of your life by yourself. No one's going to listen to you for over 30 years. Meanwhile, everyone's going to be fighting against you. But then he says, but don't be scared. He goes, in fact, if you are terrified by them, I will terrify you before them. God says, if you're going to be scared, I'll give you something to be scared about. I mean, think about the life of Jeremiah. I go, God, I don't know that I could have done that. Man, that was what was hitting me. Do I have such a confidence in you, God, that I could go to some city and know for the next 30 years everyone was going to reject me and everyone was going to hate me, but I would know so sure that I am called to go out and do this. And I stand alone with you, God. Do you have a close enough relationship with God where you can stand alone with Him against everyone else, even if everyone else is going another direction? Do you have that God and me mentality? And what I learned is you know what? Jeremiah wasn't an isolated incident. Man, read Scripture. All these people had to stand by themselves. And I thought, could I have done that? Or do I love the applause of people too much? Am I so concerned that people like me that I wouldn't be able to pull this off? Or am I just so focused on God? God, I just want to please you. What's your mentality right now? Could you do anything that God's called you to, knowing that you were created for it? You're made for that purpose, and God stands with you. Think of Noah.